Welcome to Martian Mixed Martial Arts.
Wow. Wouldn't it be crazy if the aliens manufactured you to be a mixed martial arts fighter? They're like, let's see if we could just turn this.
I'm sure if it would have happened, I would have been much better than this.
Much better than this. You're the fucking champion. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but if I would be alien manufacturer, I would be Superman, you know?
Hello, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, aliens, Martians, any conscious being tuning into the podcast. I welcome you to episode 35 of Martian Mixed Martial Arts. We have a very, very special episode for you this week, perhaps the biggest UFC card of the year, definitely the biggest card of the year. So I brought in a very special guest for his third time on the podcast, first time coming back in 4 months, but my man Luke is with me today. What's up, dude?
Yeah, glad to be back, man. I've been checking my phone like crazy today. I saw that O'Malley pull out, and now I'm worried. Waiting for somebody else to get used.
Yeah, unfortunately, we had Sean O'Malley get pulled from the 229 card last night. Unfortunately, some USADA problem. Who the hell knows what's going on? He's a scrawny little string bean. So when USADA is pulling him from fights the week before the biggest card of the year, man, it's just another example of USADA's typical bullshit. But big fight cards always take some hits. The last big fight card we had planned, 223, just got completely dismantled the week of the fight. We're recording this episode on Monday, 5 days before the fight goes on. So as fight fans know, 5 days is a lot of time for shit to happen. So fingers crossed that everyone is wrapped up in bubble wrap until then. Fingers crossed there's no more weight issues, there's no USADA issues, everything just remains intact. There's a great card this weekend, and we really need to keep it intact. We haven't had a card this big in months, maybe even years. So before we jump into the preview for UFC 229 this week, we are going to be recapping Bellator 206 that went down this past weekend. So Luke, did you catch the Bellator this weekend? And if you did, what did you think of it?
Yeah, so I fired up my free trial of DAZN, and I was at a party. I actually got it to play on the TV at the party, so I had like a bunch of filthy casuals commentating on it. But I checked out the whole main card. That first fight, Gaston Bolanos versus Isidro Gutierrez. What'd you think about that one? That was a sick-ass left hook.
Yeah, man, just destruction by Bolaños. He looked really composed in there. It looks like he's getting more comfortable in the MMA world of combat sports. He's like we said last week, a very established Muay Thai fighter, just an incredible Muay Thai fighter, kickboxer. But struggling a little bit to adapt to MMA. Hasn't fought too good competition yet, and he looked really, really good in this one though. Moving on to that next fight on the Bellator card, we had Kerry Melendez defeat Dakota Zimmerman in a razor-thin split decision. Man, Melendez I think was minus 1,400 for this fight, and somehow Kerry Melendez finds a way to look just average in there. Her opponent Dakota Zimmerman was, I believe, plus 850, which is just unheard of for women's MMA, let alone a woman who's 2-0 in the Bellator, excuse me. So pretty competitive fight. What'd you think of this one?
Yeah, it was bizarre. I hadn't really drank the Kool-Aid on Melendez quite yet. Both of the other women she'd fought look, to be soccer moms on the night that they weren't fighting. Zimmerman really impressed me. Decent guard. Had that. I can't remember. She had what was it? An armbar?
Armbar and triangle. Both of them were.
Yeah, that triangle was deep. Really, really deep triangle. And I mean, she was working on that for a little while. I think she transitioned from the armbar from the triangle. Melendez looks all right. I think it's really just the level of competition she's fighting. I know Bellator strawweight division's pretty thin, so she could definitely, rise up to the top pretty fast. But yeah, pretty solid women's MMA fight.
Yeah, I was surprised, with 2 pro MMA fights between them. It was a bit sloppy, it was a bit, low level, but it was still entertaining, definitely. So moving on to the next fight on the card, Aaron Pico, man, Bellator's biggest prospect right now. I think, future UFC champion, defeat Leandro Higo by TKO in the first round. Just some of the best hands in boxing already, or excuse me, some of the best hands in MMA already, and this is his 5th MMA fight. So just such incredible potential with Pico. What'd you think of his performance?
God, I mean, it's everything I wanted and more. It's so interesting to see such a boxing heavy approach, in MMA, where every Bellator fight in the past has just kind of felt stale and like really low in action. I feel like Pico is the perfect cure to that curse that Bellator kind of has. He's high action. He's got 3 first-round finishes now, or 4 first-round finishes in a row. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, super. I mean, I can't be any more high on him. If I'm Coker, I give him one more fight before I give him one of the Pitbull brothers. I'd give him James Gallagher so he crushes a big name, and then you give him a Pitbull. Like you said, I think future UFC champion, and I think he's here to stay.
Yeah, I think Gallagher is 135, and quite frankly, I think he would just get absolutely mauled by Aaron Pico. So I think that they wouldn't. I don't think they would take out 2 of their prospects in one fight like that. But yeah, Aaron Pico, just nothing but good things to say about him. His past opponents were a little bit low level, but Leandro Higo, it was a proven veteran of Bellator, 18-4 record coming into this fight, and he was just dismantled. Didn't look too easy. Pico caught some shots in there, but he looked confident. He was able to eat some shots and come back with harder ones to get the TKO in this one. Just incredible performance from Pico.
Yeah, my only worry about Pico is he does kind of carry his chin a little high in exchanges. But, I'm sure his camp has addressed this and they're going to see this and try to fix it. Maybe a better counter-based fighter can, snipe that chin. Higo didn't really have too much luck doing it. But, yeah, I definitely think that Pico, if he does get that chin down, is going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, and working with one of the best boxing trainers of all time, in Freddie Roach. So I'm confident that they will fix any holes in his game. And obviously he has that incredible wrestling pedigree to fall back on. So he, like I said, just incredible boxer, incredible wrestler. Man, this dude is scary. And like I said, like we've been saying, 2022, man, I think by then he will have a UFC title wrapped around his waist. In the first fight of the welterweight Grand Prix in Bellator, we had Douglas Lima defeat Andrei Koreshkov by rear naked choke in the 5th round. Man, just a little bit of a boring fight leading up to it. A lot of stalling against the cage. But man, Douglas Lima's takedown defense was incredible in this one. He was taken down a lot by Koreshkov in their first couple fights. Rory McDonald took him down a lot, and that must have been the last straw for Lima in that last fight. He decided to get his takedown defense on point. Damn near perfect, I want to say. He might have gotten down to the canvas once, but Koreshkov couldn't really get anything going. Lima was having his way with him on the feet, and eventually he got the choke in the 3rd minute of the 5th round. Just great performance from Lima, and I think that he, with how the main event went, I believe that Lima might be possibly the favorite to win the tournament at this point.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think Lima's definitely the favorite to win the Bellator tournament. I saw a lot of hot takes on Twitter by some MMA journalists stating that Lima's, quite possibly the best welterweight in the world, and I think that that's a mile off. I think he's good. I think his Muay Thai game's good. His takedown defense is definitely improved. I wasn't very impressed with Koreshkov. I thought that Koreshkov kind of gave a one-note performance, like you said, really only focused on his wrestling. I don't think Koreshkov really imposed any striking that would have worried Lima too much. But yeah, I was really impressed. Kind of, not the most interesting fight. That rear naked choke was definitely insane at the end, where he just totally choked him out. Lima's leg kicks are just vicious, though. What he did to Rory, and then you could see that damage piling up on Koreshkov as well. So I don't know. You put Douglas Lima and Tyron Woodley in a cage one night, and if Lima's available to able to avoid that right hand, he gets those leg kicks going. You never know, but tough to go all the way in with some people and agree that he's the best at 170.
Yeah, that's a ridiculous claim. Top 10, maybe even top 5 welterweights in the world for sure. But saying he's the best is ridiculous. But yeah, good point about Koreshkov. Just really couldn't get anything going on the feet in this one. Didn't really threaten Lima at all. And Douglas Lima, I think, was like 16-1 favorite after the 4th round or something like that. So he seemed was like he was cruising to a decision anyway.
Yeah.
In the co-main event, go ahead about Lima. Say it.
I was just going to say, he's evolved so much over the course of his career that takedown defenses came a long way. Koreshkov's been a guy who's kind of stayed stagnant. His game has kind of just stayed the same. He's never really evolved or changed. He's had losses to guys like Askren, where it was a takedown-heavy game plan. But, yeah, Lima, it is nice to see Lima evolve over time.
For sure, and he improved incredible leaps from his last fight. And in the co-main event, we had the quadology fight. Whatever, it could be a quintuplet. Whatever. I was trying to figure out a name for this fight last week, but I settled on quadology. Quentin Rampage Jackson defeating Vanderlei Silva by TKO 9 minutes and 30 seconds into this fight. A lot better of a fight than I expected. I expected one of these old fucks to go down on the first punch that landed, but they both of them ate some shots. Both of them looked not terrible. Vanderlei Silva was throwing a couple of head kicks in there that actually looked like he had some decent flexibility. Rampage, his boxing was on point, and that's how he ended up getting the finish in this one. A bit of an early stoppage, I would say, but he's the referee. Mike Beltran was just looking out for these old guys. They're 40 and 42. They're both heavyweights. They're not cutting any weight anymore, luckily, and it's good to stop those fights early. So fun fight, was more fun than I expected, honestly. But in Rampage coming out on top.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really expect much, like you said. I didn't really know how. The two ways I saw it going was somebody gets clipped really early, or it goes 3 boring rounds after somebody gets rocked and gasses out. Yeah, I was impressed with Wanderlei, honestly, more than anything. I knew how Rampage was going to come out. I figured, kind of exactly how he fought was really what I was looking forward to. But I didn't really see Wanderlei, like you said, throwing those head kicks and kind of just like those vintage nasty hooks digging upstairs into the body. I mean, the success he had while he was still in there was pretty impressive. So I thought he was done after that loss to Chael. But, I mean, if you're Wanderlei, have a couple more fights in Bellator. Make a little bit of that sweet retirement cash.
Yeah, and maybe they should bring in, Crow Crop or something next and really get these rematches going, or Shogun or something. Fun fight, though. And in the main event, we had Gegard Mousasi put a beat down on Rory MacDonald, stopping him in the second round by TKO via elbows and punches. Just vicious ground and pound. The fight started off, and in the first 30 seconds, Gegard Mousasi snapped Rory's head back with a jab. And the jab has been Rory MacDonald's Achilles heel in his MMA career. 5 jabs later, Rory was already, he didn't know what to do. He was, looked like he started panicking. He, then eventually went for a desperation Imanari roll in the second round. And, it totally backfired. Mousasi got on top and just completely pounded him out. A brutal, bloody finish. Good stoppage from Herb Dean. And, I did not expect Gegard Mousasi to run through Rory MacDonald as easily as he did.
Yeah, I don't want to be that guy, but that's kind of exactly how I saw it going. I think that Rory has a lot of success when he's able to implement like I wouldn't call it pressure fighting, but Rory really does well adapting his game plan to different fighters. But I knew that Gegard's jab is like most people's, strong hand punch. Like Gegard just has that piston-like jab that, it works well against guys like Rory, and then there's guys like Machida who can get past it. But yeah, that Imanari roll was one of the most puzzling moves. I would put it up there with Weidman's spinning heel kick as like confusing mid-fight decisions. I know he was getting jabbed apart, so there's probably really nothing he could do.
Yeah, it was desperation at its finest.
Yeah, Gegard's ground and pound was scary. I feel like Gegard's the sky's the limit over there at Bellator. I feel awful that the UFC let him go. Honestly, I think Gegard versus Robert Whittaker is one of the highest level matchups the UFC can make. Gegard Yoel, Gegard at 205. Gegard Gustafsson, Gegard Jones. I'd like to see any of them.
Yeah, the UFC has let a lot of guys go, and a lot of those guys have done well over in Bellator. The 170, 185, and light heavyweight champion I believe are all former UFC champions. I would like to see the UFC just go ahead and sign one of them right back. Gegard's probably making some cash over there. So let's figure out what Gegard was making in the UFC, and let's figure out what he's making in Bellator, because that's what it's coming down to, the brass tacks. Gegard's a big fan of drug testing. He seems to be pretty vocal on that. And he actually mentioned that in his post-fight interview with a question towards Lyoto Machida. Said, "I'll fight him," and he said, "with drug testing." And so he was very adamant on that. So the UFC obviously has a huge edge on Bellator in that aspect. So it seems like the money was the main thing driving Gegard Mousasi. It looks like he's making $90,000 and $90,000 in the UFC, and I don't know if Bellator discloses their payouts, honestly, but let's take a look and see if we can find that. I'm
almost certain he's making better money than that.
For sure.
Way better money.
Well, he has to. $150,000, no win bonus. That's interesting. That's very interesting.
But he does get sponsorships and not Reebok pay.
Yeah, that's a big one. And one thing is money, and the other thing is exposure. He headlined UFC 205 and Bellator 200 and Bellator 206, two of Bellator's biggest cards in the past couple of years. So, he's the top guy over there. He was one of 10 middleweights who was on a card every now and then, maybe co-main event, maybe fight night headliner in the UFC, but now he's top of the bill, top title fights, super fights in Bellator. He's, possibly the number one pound-for-pound fighter in Bellator. So, there's a lot more than, he might be sacrificing $40,000 from his, here's the thing. He got $90,000 a show. He might get an extra $90,000 to win, but in Bellator he's making $150,000 no matter what. Like you said, great point about the sponsorships. You can make $100,000, $200,000, maybe even more than that. I think Rory McDonald was making, $250,000 from like a cryptocurrency sponsor for his Bellator fights. So sponsors pay big, and especially when you're, like I said, the main event of the biggest events there. Your sponsor tag is probably a lot of money. So there's no doubt that Gegard is making more money, and I'm sure he's just happier, being the top dog over there. Can't really, and he's fighting good fights. Rory, Lovato Jr.'s next. Machida, it's not like he's fighting, bums, easy fights. He's still getting great competition, and I'm happy with Mousasi's move.
Yeah, so overall, what did you think about the presentation on DAZN and the pacing and everything? This was a new foray for Bellator going to this streaming service. I myself really liked it. I had some issues with the stream, but other than that, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, same with me. The stream, at some points it was a little laggy, but I think that was just early. I don't know. I think that the problems got a lot better throughout the night. One thing I did notice is they have an Xbox app for it, which for me is way better because at my apartment, my laptop is wireless and my Xbox is wired. So the wired connection is obviously going to be better. And when I watch pay-per-views, I can't get them on my TV, so I have to rely on Wi-Fi. But so whenever a card is on Fox Sports Go or any type of app on the Xbox, I really appreciate it. And I bet a lot more people around the world do. People with Rokus and Chromecast and Amazon Fire Sticks, all that shit. You don't need a TV subscription to watch Bellator, basically. So I think it was good, and the pacing, man, is great. A fight's over, they do the interview, and within 3 or 5 minutes, the people are already walking out for the next fight. It's great pacing. They tried a 6-fight card at 10 p.m. I believe it's their first time they ever done that. They always start at 9 p.m. over at Bellator, but they did that. Strange move, a bad move, I think, in my mind. They had that kind of slow fight with Lima and Koreshkov that went on till midnight, and then they still had 2 more fights that started after midnight. So that's never ideal. Theoretically, if you have 2 5-round co-main and main events, and both of those go the distance, that card could have been going on till 1:30 in the morning. Luckily, there was 2 finishes in the co-main and main event, so it shortened it up a bit. But I would like to see them start earlier, and like to see them stick with 4 or 5 fight cards. Because, man, one thing I noticed about this is I tuned into this card at 10 p.m. and it was I caught the 6 main card fights, and it was great. But I woke up the next morning and I felt just so much better that I only tuned in for 3 hours instead of when I'm watching UFC. It's like I'm tuning in at 6:30 and I'm not done till 1 o'clock. The next day I wake up and it's like, man, I spent all night last night watching fights, 7-8 hours, and while they got it short and sweet and to the point with Bellator. So great event for them. Really happy that they're starting to get their shit figured out.
Yeah, and their production values, like I said, I watched it with I was at my girlfriend's 21st birthday, and we just tossed it on the TV. I had a bunch of, just a bunch of diverse group of people, and almost everybody at the party at one point was down on the couch watching the fights. A lot of the comments I got from some of the casual people who were watching it is, they thought the production values in Bellator were better than that of the UFC. The big screen, kind of like Pride style walkouts. That goes a long way in attracting casuals. And I think if Bellator really does market this DAZN app, and they get out there and they use that Paramount money to market, that they can definitely compete with the UFC when it comes to single events. Skill level of fighters and all that different stuff. It's going to be tough to catch up to the UFC, but if they continue to make these Rampage versus, everybody knows who Rampage is. Everybody in the whole party showed up and came and watched Rampage fought because they've seen him in the A team. They know who he is. So they have some of that name value, and if they use that and they play to their strengths, I think they're going to have, a profitable couple of next year.
Yeah, I agree. I bet your girlfriend loved the fact that you were watching fights instead of hanging out with her at her party. But brave man.
Yeah, she got a kick out of it. She didn't expect anything less.
Yeah, there you go. She's that's a good one right there. Then she understands the need for MMA. Well, with that being said, that's Bellator 206. We're going to be moving on to UFC 229, going down from Las Vegas, Nevada, headlined by the lightweight title fight between Khabib, the Eagle Nurmagomedov, and the lineal champ, Conor, the notorious McGregor. So if you were interested in that fight, I will give you a timestamp on when to hear the analysis of that one. But fortunate for you, we have 11 fights before then, I believe. So just stay tuned if you're interested in those in the first 11, and then like I said, if you're interested in just hearing Conor, that analysis, I will give you a link to that in the description of the YouTube video. So starting off with the first fight on the card, Ryan LaFleur, who is 14-2, is taking on Tony Martin, who is 13-4. The betting line for this fight opened up at Tony Martin plus 165, Ryan LaFleur minus 190, and a lot of line movement coming in on this one on Tony Martin's way. Shrinking him down. Tighten up these line margins a little bit. Right now, I see it at plus 120 to Tony Martin, Ryan LaFleur at minus 140. So pretty significant line change in this one. Ryan LaFleur is a great wrestler. I believe he was a Division I wrestler in college. A little bit older now. He's 35 years old, coming off of a good win against Alex Garcia in his last fight, and Tony Martin coming off of a good win in his last fight against what was that Japanese gentleman's name? Pulling it up. Keita Nakamura. He jumped up to welterweight for the first time last fight, and he looked pretty good in this one. So, what do you think in Tony Martin versus Ryan LaFleur?
I mean, this jumps off at me as being the easiest fight to pick on the entire card. Tony Martin's a guy who's jumping up from lightweight to welterweight. And in my opinion, Ryan LaFleur is one of the most underrated people at welterweight. I think his top game is ridiculous. His BJJ credentials are out of this world. Like you said, his wrestling, his striking's pretty rudimentary, but he knows what he's good at. He's not going to stand up and strike with you. He has, been knocked out in the past with guys who can stop his wrestling. He's going to take Tony Martin down, and he's either going to submit him or grind him out for 3 rounds. And that's definitely I put this fight in most of my parlays. This is my lock of the week.
Interesting. I see where the respect is coming from. Tony Martin is a jiu-jitsu black belt. He has, he in his fight against Oliver Aubin Mercier, he was able to take his back in that one. Mercier, a good grappler himself, he was, very, very close in that fight. But, man, Martin's wrestling is just on another level. Man. His pressure, he'll grind you the fuck out, man. He's nasty. And I can't believe the line movement on this one, really. I think, Tony, Ryan LaFleur should be, minus 200 in this one. Might be considering a play on him at minus 140, man. I find it pretty safe. Like I said, I can't believe how many people are on Tony Martin in this one, and I can't believe the line movement on this one. I really, really think I might have to make a play on it. Yeah,
me too. I mean, you look at Keita Nakamura. I mean, that's a pretty solid win. He's not that bad of a grappler. I just think that LaFleur brings a physicality and a strength that none of the guys that Tony Martin's ever fought before are going to bring. Aubin Mercier is a great grappler in his own right, but I don't think he has the physicality of what LaFleur does. I think LaFleur's smart enough not to get drug into any scrambles where he could get armbarred or, triangled. I think he keeps an impressive top game, and he either, like I said, I see a 3-round decision. I don't think he'll finish Tony Martin, but I can definitely see, an easy 30-27 decision.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it seems very likely. The fact that Martin or LaFleur by decision isn't a favorite outcome is incredible. Actually, it is minus 106. So, great line on that one. And moving on to Nick Lentz taking on Gray Maynard in this one. Nick Lentz is 28-9-2. Gray Maynard 13-6-1. Both these guys have been around forever. The betting line opened up in this one at Gray Maynard plus 195. Nick Lentz minus 235 right now. Maynard is plus 185. Nick Lentz minus 225. So not much movement coming in on this one. But right off the bat, it seems to be value on Gray Maynard. Gray Maynard is, obviously he's gone through his struggles lately. He has had trouble with inactivity, but he's still, an incredible wrestler. He's still got a great wrestling base, and I think this is just a good matchup for him. Nick Lentz, his striking is, nothing special, man. He's got some decent subs, especially coming off the takedown. He's submitted good wrestlers like Will Brooks with that guillotine, and he might catch Maynard with it in this one. And just, standing at where their careers are right now, and Nick Lentz being like the younger, more active guy, I would say that Lentz is the favorite, but man, I would not put him as wide as minus 225 in this one. So, like I said, values on Gray Maynard. I have not made a play on him because, man, it's hard to trust. It's hard to trust Gray Maynard. He hasn't fought in 15 months. I can't trust him, but value on his line for sure.
Yeah, I don't think you should trust him. I think that value is, basically garbage. In my opinion, Gray Maynard's chin is absolutely shot, and I think that Nick Lentz is, the fresher guy here. I mean, I think if this fight happened, a couple years ago, this would definitely be a closer matchup. I just don't think Gray has anything anymore. I mean, his last fight was Ryan Hall. Am I correct?
Teruto Ishihara. Man, that Ryan Hall fight is one of the funniest fights ever. I don't remember the Ishihara fight at all. I don't think I watched it. But man, that fight against Ryan Hall it shows you where he's at mentally. He had a guy who, was trying to pull guard. He was trying to initiate his jiu-jitsu, and he was so frustrated that he was, putting his hands up to the ref and getting like kicked in the face by Hall, and didn't want to touch gloves after the fight and was super frustrated. It was hilarious. If to a casual fan you'd say, "What the fuck is up with this Ryan Hall guy? Why does he keep sitting down and running away?" But man, to a person who knows their shit, Gray Maynard was the one who was running in that fight. He wanted no part to do with Ryan Hall, and literally looked like he gave up like halfway through the fight. So just like you said, just questions his mental ability in this one.
Yeah, I mean, Lentz is sneaky good, too, like that Brooks fight. There's been so many different fights. I mean, even that Chad Mendez fight that, Lentz had. I know Chad Mendez had the flu or some shit during that fight, but, I mean, Lentz looked – that was when Mendez was unstoppable, and Lentz didn't look awful against Chad Mendez for the short time he was in there with him. But, yeah, I definitely would go Lentz. Both of these guys are, probably on the tail end of their careers. Definitely Gray Maynard's way on his way out, way more than what Nick Lentz is. I wouldn't be confident enough to put any play on Gray Maynard. I'm probably not going to touch this fight betting wise.
Yeah, me neither. It's just a clear pass for me. I mean, I see a lot of guys out there who have trouble passing on fights. They think that there's just because they know MMA and they're good at picking fights and they're good at making bets, they think that there's value on every fight. But I can guarantee you there is not. So don't be afraid to pass on this one, because I think it's very pass worthy. In the next fight we have Alan Patrick, who is 15-1, taking on Scott Holtzman, who is 11-2. Alan Patrick opened up in this one at -250. Scott Holtzman at +210. The line currently sits at almost identical, -255 for Patrick, and Holtzman at +215. With how many guys we see absolutely steamrolled to favorites, just people who, like we were saying, Carrie Melendez is a girl, she's got decent skill. I would say she should have been -300 last fight. But like I said, so many people are just, they can't not pass on a fight. They have to put some action on it. They're like, oh, Carrie Melendez, yeah, she should be -400. I'll just put $300 on Carrie Melendez. And then, everyone does that, and it gets all the way to -1400. With how many favorites we've been seeing, the era of the juice that has been going on these past couple of years, apparently in MMA. I've been talking to bettors who have been around much longer, and they said the lines have never gotten this wide before. I don't know if it's more people betting. I don't know if it's sports books like lowering the amount of that a limit needs to shift a betting line. I don't know what it is, but there's a lot more heavy favorites. Alan Patrick should be a heavier favorite than he is right now. This dude is incredible. People call him the Brazilian Nurmagomedov. He's got just incredible wrestling, incredible jiu-jitsu, incredible cardio, man. He will put the pace on you and beat you down. His only loss in his career coming to Maribek Taisimov, where he wasn't able to implement his takedowns and, got smoked on the feet in this one. But, he's fighting another guy who's, kind of just like a wrestle boxer like Scott Holtzman. Hasn't had too much success in the UFC. I think this is a very clear win for Alan Patrick, and I would trust him at -250.
So Alan Patrick, like you said, great fighter. Scott Holtzman, kind of that wrestle boxing style. I don't know. I just, for all the footage I've watched for this fight, and I've seen all of Alan Patrick's fights, I've seen all of Scott Holtzman's fights, I'm just not confident in this one. Kind of like you said, I don't make plays on stuff. I don't feel obligated to make a play on every fight on a card. I make plays on stuff that I trust and that I go back and I research. I just don't feel confident in this fight. I don't know why. It should be Alan Patrick steamrolling Scott Holtzman, but I feel like Scott Holtzman has enough of a chance that I don't want to trust the -250.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't bet on it myself, but like I said, I was just using that as a point where I can't imagine betting on people more than -200 often, but this would be a spot where I could see how people could trust him.
Yeah, Scott Holtzman is somewhat chinny too. I mean, I think in most of his fights he's been significantly rocked. Patrick can sling it with the best of them, so might not be a terrible bet just to toss like, buck or something on Patrick by TKO.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that most of the money is tied up in his like decision line or his submission line. But I'm looking over on this website, Sportsbook Review, a great new resource I just discovered. It seems it says what percentage of wagers are coming in on each fighter, and it shows that 44% of people are betting on Scott Holtzman. So it seems like there's a lot of people who are maybe on board with you, who maybe don't trust Patrick as deep as minus 250 and are actually are a little bit confident in that and putting some money on Holtzman. So should be a good wrestling fight in this one. And moving on to the next fight, we have Yana Kunitskaya taking on Lena Landsberg. Yana is 10-4. Lena is 8-3, and the betting line for this one opened up at Yana Kunitskaya minus 165, Lena Landsberg plus 145. What are you thinking for this fight between these two ladies?
I haven't seen enough of Yana Kunitskaya. I saw the 15 seconds of the Cyborg fight, and I've seen her Invicta fights, but Landsberg's legit. She has pretty good striking. She's got a really good chin, kind of that Muay Thai base. My head says Kunitskaya, no play on it betting-wise, but if I had to go with anybody, I'd say Kunitskaya by decision.
Yeah, for sure. That's the way I would go too. I think Yana's gonna be able to take her down and probably win a fight. Just a wrestling fight. I think like you said, Landsberg. Good striker, but her ground game is definitely her weakness, and I think that that will be exposed in this one. Aspen Ladd took her down and pounded her out. And I think that there's a chance Kunitskaya does the same thing, although she not really a ground and pound type fighter, more of a submission fighter. And speaking of Aspen Ladd, she is in the next fight. Aspen Ladd, who is 6-0, taking on veteran Tonya Evinger, who is 19-7. Man, all these girls have been slayed by Christina. I shouldn't even try to say her real name. Cyborg. They've been slayed by Cyborg. 3 of these girls have lost to Cyborg in the past couple years. So the betting line for this one, Aspen Ladd opened up minus 120. Tonya Evinger plus 100. Looking over at $5 right now, we have Aspen Ladd minus 160, Tonya Evinger plus 140. So a lot of money coming in Aspen Ladd. Here's another interesting thing with this sportsbookreview.com. 61% of wagers are coming in on Tonya Evinger and only 39% to Aspen Ladd, even though Aspen Ladd's money line has shifted from minus 120 to minus 160. So the 39% of people who are betting on Ladd are betting big, and they're still despite there being 22% differential in where the bets are coming in, the line is still moving Aspen Ladd's way. So in terms of analysis for this fight, I don't have much. I see Aspen Ladd as a girl who's on the come up. She's been unfortunately, I think, had some weight issues in her last fight and got that fight canceled the week of. But she's has wins over Sajara Eubanks, who's one of the top women at women's flyweight right now, and like we said, over Lena Landsberg as well. Also has a very established amateur record at 7-1. Very rare you see a woman with that much of an amateur record. So despite her being the way less experienced fighter, Aspen Ladd, I still trust her against the veteran in Evinger. Man, she's coming off of a knee injury. She's must be 37 years old. Man, come on. Had a bunch of recent fights canceled. 3 out of her last 4 fights were canceled, and she also got that ass beat by Cyborg. So I favor Aspen Ladd in this one. And what do you think about this one, Luke?
Man, have you seen the pictures on Twitter of Aspen Ladd after this new strength and conditioning program?
Yeah, she's juiced to the tits. No, she's ripped.
Yeah, she's pretty ripped up. I'm not going to lie. That made me want to go hit up Bovada or 5 Dimes after I saw that picture. But yeah, I'm going to have to agree. I got Ladd by, probably maybe TKO after taking Evinger down and just pounding her out. I think that Ladd's growing and adding more tools to her arsenal. I've watched a lot of Ladd's earlier fights, and I've always thought that she was going to be one to watch in that division. Evinger's great fighter. She's established herself a long time, multiple time champion. I just think she's on her way out right now.
Yeah,
But yeah,
just a little bit over the hump for Evinger, because man, looking at her record, dude, she's got a lot of finishes. She's got a lot of submissions, good amount of TKOs over, and she also has a good amount of losses to well-established girls too. But man, she's been fighting for 12 years. Also coming off win against Yana Kunitskaya, choked her out last year, so she's not totally shot. I think, and Aspen Ladd is not some dominating force that should just run through Evinger, but no bets on this one. But I think Aspen Ladd will get it done. But it goes to decision. It should go to decision in this one.
Yeah, I'd say decision. And I mean, like you said, shout out Tonya Evinger. She's been doing it for so long and one of the best to do it in the women's division.
And a fight that's not going to the decision is the next fight. Vicente Luque taking on Jalen Turner. Vicente Luque 13-6-1. Jalen Turner is 7-3. I'm sorry, Mr. Turner, but it seems like he's a lamb brought in for slaughter on this one. Vicente Luque has been super active in the UFC. He was coming off an incredible finish over Chad Laprise just a few months ago. Also submitted Nico Price, Bilal Muhammad. He's got great wins. His only loss is coming off of Leon Edwards last year. He got just wrestled, fucked, and put it up against the cage and couldn't implement anything. But man, he's got submissions. He's got striking. He's a wrecking ball. And Jalen Turner, don't know much about the gentleman, but I do know that this is his first fight in the UFC. He had he fought on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. He fought on Bellator. But man, you got it. It's a short notice fight for him, and he's coming in facing a killer like Luque. You got to think that this one's not going to go his way. Let's see what the betting lines opened up in this one at. We have Vicente Luque opening up at. Don't see it on the website, unfortunately. Where are you at? It's not on sportsbookreview.com. Have to transition over to best fight odds. Excuse me. Vicente Luque opened up at -320. Wow. And Jalen Turner at +240. And Vicente Luque is now -800 to +550 on Jalen Turner. So like I said, his line just got steamrolled from -320 to -800. And Vicente Luque should get this one done pretty quickly.
Yeah, I'm feeling kind of the same thing. Initially, I thought this was going to kind of play out how Kevin Holland, Thiago Santos played out. You get a Dana White's Contender Series guy fight someone established like Thiago Santos, and it's a pretty even, not I would say even, but it's a pretty well-skilled affair. I think Luque will steamroll Turner. I think that Turner is kind of just a mediocre regional fighter who, with a couple more fights in the UFC against his level competition, could turn out to be something, somewhat semi-special. I just think Luque is too much too soon for him right now. Like you said, great striking, amazing ground game. He had that one loss to Edwards, and Edwards is as polished and experienced as they come. Got Luque by stoppage. I think he can get it done on the feet or on the ground.
Yeah, I see this one ending quickly. I mean, I think the does not go the distance is minus 400 or something like this in this one. Let's check that out. -325. Luque inside the distance has got to be -300 or something like that. Let's see what we got here. Luque inside the distance -240. Yeah, that's almost as steep as inside the distance line goes, man. That's crazy. So
yeah. Turner's got 2 losses by TKO as well.
Yeah, I haven't seen him, though. I didn't know that he fought on Dana White's show, so I have to check out that before I totally rule him a sheep for slaughter. Next fight, I believe this is the Fight Pass Prelims headliner. We have Sergio Pettis, who is 17-3, taking on Jussier Formiga, who's 21-5. This might be the flyweight, number one contender fight right here. I don't see how it's not, honestly. Sergio Pettis is coming off of a decision win, razor-thin decision win, I might add, over Joseph Benavidez. But, man, as close as that fight was, Pettis looked great in it. He looked like his hands and his boxing have improved greatly. Even got a little bit of power behind his hands now. He put Joe B on his butt a few times with some knockdowns in that fight. Jussier Formiga, though, is always game, man. Always incredible ground game. He, is coming off of 2 rear naked chokes in a row over Oka Sasaki, who is a submission artist himself, and Ben Nguyen, who is not so much. But but it should be a great fight. I think on the feet, I think Pettis will control it easily. If it stays on the feet, I think that Pettis could finish Formiga, but it will not stay on the feet. Formiga is relentless with the takedown. I think that he will get Pettis down once in this fight, and I have no idea who's going to win this fight. I think that each round is going to be different. I think if Pettis wins the first, then Formiga's going to win the second, and vice versa. If Formiga gets him down in the first, then I don't think he's going to get him down in the second, and then it'll be 1-1 headed into the third, and who the hell knows who's going to dig deep and get the third. If I had to trust one person in the third round, though, it would be Sergio Pettis. He has trained for 5 rounds more recently, and I just trust his gas tank a little bit more than Jussier Formiga. The betting lines in this one are very, very tight, just like you'd expect they'd be. Sergio Pettis minus 155, Jussier Formiga at plus 135, and that's exactly what it stands at right now at 5 dimes. I'm sure a lot of action is coming in on this fight, but it's just not really affecting the betting line too much. So I'm really looking forward to this one, man. Flyweight, I just can't say enough good things about flyweight right now. I think we had I don't know if it was the last card or the card before that, but I remember we had some great flyweight fights as of lately, and hopefully that ball keeps rolling. So what are you thinking about?
Man, you
one?
took the words out of my mouth. It's 2011 was when the UFC flyweight division started, and it's just been a pleasure to see a division grow and have challengers. I feel like I've seen Sergio Pettis grow up in the UFC. He's had his first couple fights. He even had, a couple losses. He had that loss where he got flatlined by what was that guy's name?
The head kick. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But it's been great just to see the flyweight division mature and grow. And even though we lost Demetrius Johnson as champion, now we have former Olympian Henry Cejudo representing the flyweight division. So I'm really excited for this matchup. I've kind of gone back and forth with this one in the previous week. I'm kind of more resolute in my decision. I feel like Pettis is going to take this one. I think that Joe B win was huge for me. I know Joe B's kind of washed up, and that was his first fight in a while. I think Pettis, like you said, definitely has the chops on the feet, and I think his jiu-jitsu is good enough not to get caught by something by Formiga. My worry is that he gets taken down and smothered by Formiga. I'm not worried about him getting submitted, but I do think he's going to be able to use his counter wrestling skills and play with a jab heavy, like kind of distance management game plan and take a unanimous decision or a split.
Yeah, so like I said, that Benavidez fight was close as they come, and looking at the MMADecisions.com, 66% of people scored that fight for Joseph Benavidez. Interesting. I did not know this. And Sergio Pettis, only 32% of people believe that he won. Amazing. And let's see. We have Pettis won the first round convincingly, 10-9. 92% of people agree that. 73% of people believe Benavidez won round 2, and 77% of people believe Benavidez won round 3. So I might have to go back and rewatch that fight and see what that's all about. So I remember it being close. I remember the knockdowns in the first, and I remember Benavidez looking good in the latter rounds, but I don't remember who I clearly scored it for. So and obviously Sergio Pettis fighting Henry Cejudo, the champion, like you mentioned, pretty recently and losing to him. So that doesn't look too good. Obviously fighting a different animal in that fight wrestling wise, though, and an Olympic gold medalist. But I believe Sergio Pettis should be the favorite, and I'm going to side with you, thinking that he's going to get this one done. Unfortunately, like we mentioned in the first fight, I believe this should have been the headliner of the prelims. It should have been Sean O'Malley taking on Jose Alberto Quinones, but Sean O'Malley was flagged by USADA this past week. It was not made public by USADA yet, but because there is some new provisions saying that they're not announcing a failed drug test until the person is proven guilty. But I don't understand how the fuck that works. So if Sean O'Malley didn't want to voice to people, hey, I have this problem with USADA, would he have just been pulled off of this card, and then they would have been radio silent about why? They would have just said, Sean O'Malley out of, and then if it was a guy who was very prideful and didn't want to admit that he did anything wrong, or didn't want to admit he failed this test, he could have just been, like I said, silent about why he got pulled, and just so I don't understand how that's going to work. I do like the fact that they're not announcing it before they're proven guilty, because it can kind of negatively affect a fighter's career if they have an announced drug test and then it ends up being receded or proven that it was wrong. But we took a hit on this card, unfortunately. But I'm sure O'Malley will be back soon.
Yeah, I took a hit in all my parlays. I'll tell you that. I'm not a really big believer in Sean O'Malley. I think he's good, but I think Quinones could have gave him some problems, on the feet. I think that O'Malley throws with a lot of variety, and he does throw a lot of strikes, but I don't know. Yeah, I was pretty pissed off about losing this one too. As far as the whole USADA thing goes, it's definitely good not to disparage a fighter's name. If the whole Junior Dos Santos thing, everybody thought he cheated for so long, and then he ends up come back and gets his name rectified. And then there's still people who don't know that he really didn't take steroids. So that's definitely a step in the right direction. But you still do have that confusion, like you said. If O'Malley doesn't say anything, then people either speculate it's an injury or they don't know what to speculate. Now if people do pull out of cards, everyone's just going to speculate it's for a drug test failure. So yeah, it's kind of the whole USADA system, in my opinion, is bullshit and has created so much more problems than it has solutions.
Yep, and I preach that to the choir almost every week here on this podcast. But moving on to the main card, finally we arrive. Michelle Waterson who is 15-6, is taking on Felice Herrig, who is 14-7 in this strawweight fight. We had Felice Herrig open up at this one -130, Michelle Waterson at +110. Right now, the line stands exactly the same. Honestly, I think I remember Felice Herrig opening +100 in this one, but who knows what this website. I believe Felice Herrig will get this one done. I don't have much analysis for this one. It's going to be a close, razor-thin fight. Both these girls have, decent stand-up, decent ground game. It's, they're right around the same skill level. It's, there's with 5 through 15 of women's strawweight, every single fight is a toss-up. Every single fight's a pick-em. Even if you think that a person has an edge, Angela Hill, it doesn't matter. The scorecards are going to dictate differently. So, not much analysis in this one. I'm cheering for Felice Herrig. I just like her a lot better. And I think she'll get this one done, too, honestly. I think she's the better fighter.
Yeah, I don't really have much analysis on this one either. These are definitely two of my not as favorite girls in the strawweight division. Like you said, most of the top 5 through 10 matchups in that division come down to a split decision, unless it's Andrade killing you. But, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of cautious on who I pick here because I just feel like both of their games, like you said, nullify each other so well. Yeah, I don't know. This one's tough to pick. I guess I'll play as advocate and go Waterson. Maybe Waterson can mix it up on some exchanges. Felice's Muay Thai is legit, but Waterson's got that weird kicking game, and she's got that kind of weird Mike Winkeljohn type Holly Holm stuff. Throws.
Good head and arm.
Set you up to get your back taken. Felice's rear naked choke's pretty sweet, so I might go Felice then.
Yeah, it's unfortunately, both these girls I think had close split decisions against Courtney Casey. I think both of them won, but both of them, I think the majority of people agreed they lost. So, who knows what to expect with these girls.
If I'm making the card, I toss Vicente Luque versus Jalen Turner in the spot of this.
Oh, interesting. Really, I think I would. I think I would go with Pettis as the opener.
Yeah, that wouldn't be too bad.
It's literally the number one contender fight at flyweight. It's on the prelims, but regardless. Next fight, we have a great matchup in the heavyweight division. We have Derek Lewis, who is 20-5, taking on Alexander Volkov, who is 30-6. This fight opened up -185 for Alexander Volkov, +160 for Derek Lewis. Right now, Volkov is -175. Derek Lewis is +155. Man, let me tell you something right now. -175 is the steepest favorite I have ever bet on. Previously, it was minus 150 for Alex White. That turned out terribly. Every time I bet on favorites, it usually turns out terribly. But fuck it, man. Alex Volkov this is a great matchup for him. He's a long striker. He's got great kicks, great jab, good boxing. Also has a good guard. If he gets taken down, then he's gonna just put you in his guard and wait till they stand you up, or just completely nullify you. He's great. He had a great performance against Fabricio Verdum, where he nullified the best heavyweight grappler of all times grappling. He butchered him on the feet, eventually getting the TKO in the 4th round. Showed good cardio in that fight, showed good composure. It was his first UFC main event, and he handled it greatly. On the other hand, Derek Lewis fought Francis Ngannou in the co-main event of UFC 226 in the most boring UFC fight of all time. It was just a staring contest. Both the guys were scared to throw. Neither one of them wanted to initiate. Derek Lewis claimed he had problems with his back in the fight. Who the hell knows, man? It's I just have to go with one guy who's having health issues, and he's inconsistent. He is obviously a great fighter. He's pulled off some great wins in the cage, Derek Lewis. But man, he's fighting a guy who's got his shit figured out right now. He's really in stride, I believe, and I think that Alex Volkov should win this fight very easily. Might TKO Lewis in the later rounds, but should just win a decision very decisively, 30-27.
Yeah, I'm going to totally agree with you. I mean, this kind of echoes how I felt. I mean, don't get me wrong, Derek Lewis is probably one of my favorites in the business right now, but I just don't think he's gotten serious enough. I think if he changed his diet, and he actually did start rehabbing his back, he could be a force in the heavyweight division. But I think every single one of his fights, he's always got to worry about one punch, or, the guy has a messed up back, and in his last fight, he throws 60 head kicks. There's got to be like some higher level thinking to know that that's probably not going to be conducive to having a healthy back through a 3-round fight. Like you said, Volkov is just a killer everywhere, and I feel like Volkov's definitely a dark horse in the heavyweight division. I don't know. I know that Derek Lewis has never really been – I mean, he did get knocked out by Mitrione and Hunt. The Mitrione knockout was bizarre, where Mitrione kind of just like NFL stiff-armed him, and then the Hunt one was more from back problems, but – I wouldn't bet like a KO line on Volkov, but I'm definitely going to take Volkov as a favorite as well.
Yeah, I mean Volkov, man, like you said, dark horse of the division. Who the hell knows? But right now, Daniel Cormier versus Alexander Volkov, man, I would take Volkov all day. He's got 9 inches on Daniel Cormier. He's got 9 inches of reach, or 9 inches of height, probably even more of reach. Cormier could take him down and pound him out, but man, I'm telling you, Volkov's guard is so good, and his legs are so long. He would hold Daniel Cormier in between his legs, and Cormier wouldn't be able to do anything. Even though I'm a massive Cormier fan, I think he's one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. But man, what a nightmare matchup if he ever had to face Volkov. But I don't think that fight will happen. And cheering for the Russian in this one, obviously. Moving on to the next fight, we have Ovince St. Preux, who is 23-11, taking on Dominic Reyes, who is 9-0. Ovince St. Preux opened up plus 165, Dominic Reyes at minus 190, and since then Reyes has shifted a little more to more of a favorite at minus 225. Ovince St. Preux up to plus 185. I have already locked in my action on Ovince St. Preux in this one. I might be a little biased because he won me some money in his last fight. It's a very similar situation, though. He's fighting a young, up-and-coming striker who has looked great in the UFC so far, has not fought the greatest competition, and somehow Ovince St. Preux is an underdog. Even I got him at, plus 140, I think, against Tyson Pedro in his last fight, and he's even steeper in this fight. He obviously got caught in that fight. He got hit really hard. He got rocked, put on his ass, but it didn't matter. He still came back and he submitted him, the same round where he ate all those big shots. I just think that Dominic Reyes is too raw, too unproven. He's got 30 minutes of fight time in his entire pro career, even, 3 quick first-round finishes in the UFC over guys whose UFC record is 5-11. So I have no problem playing Ovince St. Preux in this one. I think that he wins this fight. I think that he wins it by submission, and I believe that it happens, pretty early in the fight. I think that, Reyes' ground game is very unknown. And I think Ovince is going to, exploit that because Ovince has got an incredible amount of submissions. I want to say probably some of the most submissions in UFC light heavyweight division history. So, going to be happy to play Ovince St. Preux in this one. What are you thinking about this one?
Yeah, so you cut out on my feed. I'm not sure if it totally cut out, but yeah, I don't know. I've kind of gone back and forth on this one. I've been so high on Dominic Reyes in his time in the UFC. I think he poses a great problem to a lot of the light heavyweights. I mean, you see a guy like God, I'm drawing a blank on his name, middleweight guy who fought Thiago Santos and lost. God, what
Eric Anders?
Anthony Smith. You see a guy like Anthony Smith come from 185, and he's a pretty decent 185 fighter, and then vaults up to not quite title contention, but he's up there now after being Shogun in that short amount of time. I feel like Reyes steamrolls a lot of those guys. I don't know. Like you said, Ovince St. Preux is legit. I mean, striking's great, and I mean his ground game. That win against his last win with that Kimura was just amazing. To come back after being rocked and to keep his composure and end up winning against Tyson Pedro. I'd have to go Ovince St. Preux. My head says Ovince St. Preux, but my heart says Dominic Reyes. I wouldn't mind. I think I'm going to probably make a play on Dominic Reyes.
Interesting. At what, by TKO, minus 225?
Yeah, minus 225 TKO. I do know Ovince St. Preux,
that's his money line, but his TKO is probably a lot better. Let's check out what his I mean, if Reyes wins, it will be by TKO. I mean, we haven't seen him out of the first round yet. I think it's highly unlikely that it goes to the decision. Reyes by TKO, minus 117.
His fight against Jeremy, he's fought bums. Jeremy Kimball, a couple of those guys, absolute bums. And it's not like he got him out of there in seconds. It did take him a little while to get in there. And I mean, in those exchanges, when you're fighting those bums, you can look like $1 million. When you come in there, get into there with somebody as fast twitch as Ovince St. Preux, who can, counter you on turn on a dime, it's going to look a little bit different. Although I do like Reyes is so long and he stays behind a good, nice, long jab that I do see him posing some problems for Ovince St. Preux that Ovince St. Preux is going to have to adapt to early.
Yeah, I mean, Ovince's fights are just crazy, man. I mean, he hasn't gone to decision since his fight with Ozdemir back in February of 2017. He's active too, 3-1 in the past year. And the last guy to smoke him on the feet though was Jimmy Manuwa, and that was back when Manuwa was really on his run. At his best run of his career. I just don't think that you can put Reyes and Manuwa in the same contention right now. Latifi obviously rocked him on the feet and then choked him out, but I don't see. I mean, his chin is he gets cracked a lot and he gets hit, but his chin holds strong. And I don't think that Reyes will be experienced enough. I mean, I think even if you watch his fight with not Ron Stallings, with Jared Cannonier, he rocks Cannonier and he gets flustered, like he hurts him and he starts spamming punches and like a guy with a little less experience, and then he eventually clips Cannonier and puts him down. But man, I'm not impressed with his finishing ability at all, and like I said, happy to play OSP. Moving on to the co-main event, this might be, I think, your favorite matchup on the card. I mean, how could you not love this matchup? It's just, man, it's flying under the radar too, man, because we have obviously the incredible main event, the lightweight main event, but we also have two of the best guys in the past 5 years at lightweight finally going at it. Tony Ferguson. Oh, I don't have his record up. Excuse me. Tony Ferguson is 23-3, taking on Anthony Pettis, who is 21-7. Both of these guys, former lightweight champions. We got 4 lightweight champions at the top of this fight card. It doesn't get any better than that. A couple of them are fake champions, Tony and Khabib, and then a couple of them are legit champions in Conor and Anthony. But the betting line in this one, surprisingly, Tony Ferguson opened up minus 310. Anthony Pettis plus 255. Right now, people are still betting Tony Ferguson all the way down to minus 360. Anthony Pettis all the way up to plus 300. Tony Ferguson is coming off of that nasty MCL injury that he suffered on August 1st, I believe, April 1st, had massive reconstructive surgery done, and he's already back 6 months later. Just shows you just how obsessed and how proactive he is. Obviously he's got that crazy training regimen that we see on social media all the time. And but man, Anthony Pettis, he's coming off of a win against Mike Chiesa at UFC 226. He dropped Chiesa in that one. His striking looked pretty good. He has some power behind his hands for the first time in a long time. And then he wrapped up a slick submission for the first time in a long time. There's a vintage Anthony Pettis performance in that one. Obviously all over a low-level competition like Mike Chiesa. Mike Chiesa just stinks. Man, In terms of betting on this one, I don't understand how anybody who knows betting would not bet on Anthony Pettis at these odds. Yeah, he's fighting a guy who is coming off of an injury, a guy who gets hit, doesn't have the best defense. And then he's coming against a guy who's going to try to pressure you, which is his weakness, which is Pettis' weakness. And he's also going to try to take you down, pound you out, slice you up with elbows, submit you. I don't think Pettis should be worried about submissions because his ground game is so good himself, but he definitely can get taken down and, pound it out. I just watched Anthony Pettis versus Dustin Poirier. What an incredible fight in that one. Poirier not really known for his wrestling, but he implemented a wrestling-heavy game plan against Anthony Pettis because he knew that is Pettis' weakness. Pettis always gets his back against the cage, and he doesn't circle off the cage. He freezes up when his back's against the cage, and he gets put against the cage and taken down, and then he doesn't do well getting back to his feet, unfortunately. He got his back taken by Poirier twice, and man, you better not let your back get taken against Tony Ferguson because he will finish it. So I think Tony Ferguson is the favorite in this one, but man, some of the odds on Pettis by KO is plus 1,100. Pettis by submission is plus 1,100. Inside the distance is plus 650. You gotta stab at those odds. And so I'll turn the floor over to you so you can give your take on this one.
God, what a fucking fight. I mean, honestly, obviously the main event is massive, biggest fight in UFC history. But I mean, this fight just does almost even more for me. I mean, Tony Ferguson's probably one of my favorite UFC fighters of all time, and as well as Anthony Pettis, crazy, well-established guys. One of the funnest, games to watch. I've thought this fight out 200 times in my head, and I still am not confident about anything. I think that this fight is just designed for fireworks. I think that, like you said, Tony's pressure game plan, and then Anthony has slick counters, and if Tony wants to take it to the ground and he's in Anthony's guard, Anthony has a live guard. If Anthony gets in Tony's guard's crazy. I mean, I have no idea what to actually predict for this fight, but I just predict an amazing fight. I think both of these guys, it's going to be a fight that you'd want to watch every weekend. I think that this could end up being the fight of the night, barring the main event, having like a 5-round wrestle fucking or, just a quick flash knockout. I mean, in my opinion, this is the fight to watch apart from the main event. I'm sure that's a pretty mutually shared opinion. As far as a prediction goes, I mean, Tony Ferguson is, in my opinion, the best lightweight in the world, but he is there to be hit. His defense is not the best. And I mean, Anthony Pettis, his boxing's not great. He's really more a kick-heavy striker. He did drop Chiesa, like you said, but like same way, I don't hold anything in that Chiesa win. I think Chiesa is massively overrated, and that his short stint up to 170 is going to take him on a trip to Bellator. Anthony had that other win over Jim Miller, and I mean, the new Jim Miller is a pretty impressive win to get after this, bout with Lyme disease. I think Jim Miller, is definitely not a bum in any regard. He's definitely still there, and he's one of the better guys at 155, tons of experience. But it's difficult for me to really truly believe Anthony Pettis can take this. I don't mind tossing a couple bucks on Anthony Pettis on the KO line. He could have a flash KO where he catches Tony, but I think Tony's just a little bit better everywhere. I think that the pressure is going to be too much for Pettis. I think that Tony is the perfect foil for everybody at 155. I think that his mixture of weird, unorthodox striking and his jiu-jitsu game takes most people out at 155, and I think Pettis is going to be another one of his victims on the way to the belt.
Yeah, great analysis. I agree with almost every single point. Man, it's just a damn shame this fight couldn't be 5 rounds, right? I mean, I don't know. You know, I agree with what you said about this being a better. If I had to, predict which was going to be a better fight, a more entertaining back and forth contest, I would pick this over the main event all day. And one thing I can guarantee is there's going to be blood. With these guys, they both are get into fucking wars. Tony Ferguson throws vicious elbows. Pettis has got a lot of scar tissue. Has been cut and open in a lot of his fights. Ferguson gets cut fairly easily too. And, with just how, aggressive both these guys are, with how active they are, how they both want to finish at all times, never complacent to go to the scorecards, we're going to see some blood in this one, and it's going to be a great fucking fight.
For sure. I'm looking forward to it.
Yup. And it crept up on us quick, man. It seemed like only a couple weeks ago I was making an announcement for Khabib McGregor. I was doing my mock Bruce Buffer introductions for the two of them because I was so excited when it was announced. But man, it is already here, ladies and gentlemen. Khabib Nurmagomedov, who is 26-0, is taking on Conor McGregor, who is 21-3. The betting line for this one opened up, I'm sure it opened up months ago before this fight was even announced. Khabib Nurmagomedov at -185, Conor McGregor at +160. Right now, Nurmagomedov is at -160, Conor McGregor is at +150. 38% of wagers coming in on Khabib Nurmagomedov and 62% of people betting on Conor McGregor. Man, I can't stress enough just how incredible this matchup is. It seems surreal that we're getting to see it. It doesn't feel real almost, In the crazy world of MMA, 5 days is a lot of time for something to go wrong, and you've seen that happen so many times before. Weight cutting issues, USADA issues, all types of different, medical problems, canceling fights. So fingers crossed, of course, none of that happens here. But before we dive into the analysis of this fight, I just want to give a little preface into my history and point of view of Conor McGregor throughout his ascension of the UFC. He entered the UFC in April of 2013. He defeated Marcus Brimage. This was a little bit prior to when I got in the UFC. I got into the UFC in around July of 2013. The first card I really tuned in from start to finish was on August 17th, 2013, headlined by Chael Sonnen versus Shogun Rua. And Conor McGregor was on that card. I watched him fight, before I knew anything about him. I watched him beat Max Holloway. I remember on the prelims, nobody got entrances. Nobody, they never showed anybody walking out of the arena. They just showed him in the cage already, and they were ready to go. And they had a special entrance for Conor McGregor. They filmed him walking out to the arena because at the time he already had a decent fan following to him, and obviously after that win he started talking a little bit more. He excelled himself to his first main event after a knee injury recovery. He headlined against Diego Brandao in Dublin, Ireland, taking him out. And man, that fight, if you watch that shit, you fucking knew right there that something special is going on. When 8,000 people, Irish people, are losing their fucking mind, throwing beers, just going absolutely bonkers for this dude. Finish. It's something you never see. You see Americans, get behind a guy every now and then. You see, Cleveland's get behind Stipe and give him a push, but nothing like this, man. Nothing. He went on to take out Dustin Poirier on his first pay-per-view after that, made it look easy. He mauled Dennis Seaver in a total mismatch, but he still drew 3 million viewers on Fox Sports 1. Right around this time, I hated Conor McGregor. I hated him. He was so cocky. He was predicting all this crazy shit. I couldn't stand him. He was coming after Jose Aldo, who was my favorite fighter at the time. I couldn't, I didn't believe it. I didn't believe that he could back up what he was talking. I didn't really believe it until he knocked out Aldo. I obviously saw him in that incredible fight versus Chad Mendes, and knew that he was legitimate at that. I didn't know the sport well enough back then, though. I didn't recognize talent, and unfortunately, I didn't know how incredible Conor was at the time. So he knocked out Jose Aldo. He got his interim or his undisputed title at the time. And I eventually had to start respecting him. Had to start realizing this dude's the real fucking deal. Celebrated his loss against Nate Diaz. Was so excited for the upset. Was cheering for Nate Diaz against him in the rematch. And even though I was cheering for Nate Diaz in this rematch, and even though I thought, the night of the fight, I thought that he was robbed and everything like that, I went back and I rewatched the fight, and I saw Conor get his ass whooped in the third round. It might have been a 10-8 round for Diaz, but I don't really think it was. It was a really dominant round, and he comes back in the fourth and wins that round, securing the third round for him. He won the first and the second round of that fight, securing the third round, which gave him the majority decision at the end of the fight. And it was then I knew that Conor McGregor was a special, special fighter. I recognized his talent before this. I recognized his aura, but I didn't recognize how much heart this guy had until that fourth round of that fight. And from that point on, I was a fan of the guy. Leading up to the UFC 205 fight, I was a fan of Conor McGregor. I was preaching to everyone, Conor McGregor's going to take out Eddie Alvarez. It didn't matter that Conor was a featherweight for most of his career. It didn't matter that Alvarez had just beaten Rafael dos Anjos. The size, the wrestling, it didn't matter. Conor went into Madison Square Garden in the great state of New York, the state that Eddie Alvarez trains out of. He was from the East Coast. He was a Philadelphia guy. He's a New Jersey, New York guy. He moves all up and down the tri-state area. And Conor McGregor comes into his home and steals the fans, steals all of the attention, steals the media. And, Eddie lost that fight before he stepped in the octagon. Eddie was knocked down 3 or 4 times in the first round. He somehow made it to his corner for the bell, and then was eventually TKO'd in the second round. And pretty, I wouldn't say brutal, I would say, quick and precise and just lethal punches from Conor McGregor that TKO'd Eddie Alvarez that night. And it was just a different type of performance. He went in there calm, calculated, and it didn't matter that there was a bigger champion. It didn't matter that he was going to be the first simultaneous UFC doubleweight champion. None of that mattered. Conor just went in there and took him out with no emotion and with just precise skill, power, and accuracy. And I knew I witnessed something special, and I believe it still stands out as one of the most impressive performances in UFC history. And that was the moment when I transitioned from a fan of Conor McGregor to a die-hard fan for life. I was already training a little bit at the time, training 2 days a week, was enjoying it, but after that weekend, I immediately ramped up how many times I was training. I was training 4 or 5 times a week. I was staying after class and hitting the bag and pretending to be Conor McGregor. And for the first time, I was actually motivated to be like somebody in the UFC, and that man was Conor McGregor. And since then, man, I've been riding or fucking dying for him, and I pretty much will through thick and thin, through the bus incident, through any incident. I will be there by Conor McGregor's side. So before we talk about the fight, quick, give me your opinion. Throughout his reign in the UFC, throughout his ascension in the UFC, what were you thinking about Conor McGregor, and what do you think about him now?
Yeah, so ironically, the very first time I saw him was his first UFC fight. I've been a hardcore fan for a while. I think the pay-per-view I really got into was Anderson versus Chael 2. I remember the day so clearly. It was originally that card was supposed to be Mousasi versus Alexander Gustafsson, and I was so psyched for that fight. I had my iMac in my living room, and I was like, okay. Oddly enough, that was also Ryan LaFlair's debut, I believe, as well. I saw on that preliminary card, that used to be aired on Facebook. It was Reza Matty, Michael Johnson, Ryan LaFlair, Ben Alloway, so a bunch of different names. And then here's this guy coming from Cage Warriors, really cocky guy, and just dismantles Marcus Brimage. I remember just being puzzled at the uppercuts and the weird stepaways and just this. I'd never seen striking like it, and super charismatic guy. So I was it shocked me. I was on the bandwagon ever since then after seeing that first fight, and the Dustin Poirier fight, obviously, like you said, kind of the most confusing fight he had was Dennis Seaver. I don't really know why that matchup was made. I think my personal favorite fight was the Diego Brandao fight. Something about that fight for me, I really thought he was going to get stopped by Brandao. I mean, Brandao is legit, won the Ultimate Fighter, seemed just like a wrecking ball. And, him just starching Diego Brandao and stuffing that takedown. I always thought the ground game was going to kill him. He had that win over Max Holloway before the Diego Brandao win, but ever since the Diego Brandao win, I've been on board. I love Dustin Poirier, and I think Conor beating Dustin Poirier has arguably made Dustin Poirier better. And I mean, he's just so many classics. UFC 189, the fight against Chad Mendes, it's like something out of a movie. The Jose Aldo flash knockout, the Nate Diaz 2 fights, like you said, the Alvarez fight. He's done so much for the UFC. I know he's had some mistakes, but all these people, the cynics who come out whenever he fights and just say that he's a sham, you're crazy. He's given so much quality entertainment to the UFC, and he's brought so many different, more fans to the sport. I think he's gonna keep fighting after this fight, and I think his legacy will live on.
Yeah, I mean, it's I can't understand the mentality behind not liking the guy. He's revolutionized MMA. He's changed everything about it. Almost nothing is the same as it was. But in 2013, we were. It's just you had the stars back then were Silva and GSP. Two respectful guys, didn't talk much shit. There was press conferences weren't really big for fights. If you had to have two guys with incredible skill who were fighting one another to sell a pay-per-view. And if you didn't have that, it wasn't going to do good buys. No one really thought about the fact that you could sell the pay-per-view on the microphone before, and that's what Conor McGregor revolutionized. He, man, if you would have told me a UFC fighter would have 24 million followers on Instagram a couple years ago, I would have told you you're crazy. And man, it just goes to show how revolutionary this guy is, how much he's transcended the sport, and how much he's grown the sport, how much he's influenced that $4 billion price tag the UFC sold for. It's it's something special to admire, and I'm really glad I got to witness it, and I'm really glad I got to be a fan of the guy. So with that being said, we're going to start talking about how the fight is going to play out now. There's honestly, I despite it being the biggest fight in the UFC history, I think that the analysis for it isn't too in depth. We know Khabib is going to look for the takedown. If Khabib takes McGregor down, he's going to do a lot of damage to McGregor. I don't think McGregor is going to be able to get up if Khabib gets down. He might ride out a round for 5 minutes and get to the second round. But shit, man, if I do not think McGregor has the wrestling ability or the jiu-jitsu, sweeps or anything to be able to get up from Khabib Nurmagomedov's top pressure. That being said, I do not believe that Khabib Nurmagomedov has the ability to stand with Conor McGregor at all. I think that if it stands for, more than 30 seconds, it will be over for Khabib. Despite his coaches saying that there's going to be some stand up, despite him standing up in his last fight and testing his striking a little bit. I find it hard to believe that Khabib is going to do anything but go out there and shoot right off the bat. It's not like I would say that it's almost impossible that McGregor is going to knock out Khabib with a knee on the way in for a takedown. So I can't see how it's not Khabib's best choice. Or just like straight up pulling guard or some shit, man. Just like literally the fight star's biggest fight in history and Khabib pulls guard. Imagine that, man. What the fuck would happen then? Who knows? So, obviously Conor's got the touch of death. He's got some of the best accuracy, the best power, the best precision we've ever seen a puncher have in the UFC. And Khabib Nurmagomedov's got some of the best wrestling, the best takedowns, the best top pressure, and the best ground and pound we've ever seen in the UFC. It's a 100% total clash of styles. You can't be confident in either side. Any motherfucker is telling you this fight is more than 60-40 one way is crazy, because it's not. And let's see what the betting line minus 160 divided by 260 I think is 62.5%. Oh no, it's let's see. Yep, 61.5%. So the people who are betting on that, I guess they're valuing a little bit more than 60% for Khabib, but man, if we're talking value on a betting line, the betting line is the values on Conor. Plus 150, it's no doubt that this fight is closer than plus 150. And I think that Conor McGregor's price will start to drop soon. The casual money, the UK money, the hype money will start coming in, and that will favor Conor. I think that it'll close around minus 130 Khabib, minus 120 for Conor. So if you want to bet on this fight, get your action in now. If you're betting Conor. If you're betting Khabib, I would suggest waiting for a few days or donating your money to a lost dog shelter, because that would be a better way to spend money than on Khabib. Just kidding. So yeah, putting the fan bias aside, thinking from an analytical standpoint, this is a razor thin contest. It has high stakes. I know that my favorite fighter can get taken down and absolutely toyed with on the ground, absolutely dominated, and hoping that doesn't happen. If I have to pick one way I see the fight going out, obviously I think Conor will catch him. I think that in the first round, that Conor McGregor will land the touch of death, and it'll put Khabib Nurmagomedov on his butt, and it's just a matter of time before Conor finishes him before then. So I'll turn the floor over to you, and you can give me your analysis of how you see this fight playing out.
Yeah, so, the ongoing narrative, every single prediction video you watch, the guy starts in and says, everybody knows that it's 50-50. Either McGregor's going to hit him with a touch of death or Khabib's going to take him down and smother him. I don't see it being 50-50. I think people are crazy if they think that McGregor's not going to be able to touch Khabib up. Even if Khabib secures a takedown fairly early in the first round, McGregor's going to be able to survive the top pressure. Khabib has so much hype coming in on with a justifiably great top game, but I don't think he has the jiu-jitsu, and I don't think he's going to be able just to TKO McGregor outright off of a takedown, from a single leg or anything that he gets from the cage, especially even if he takes him out off in the middle of the cage. I mean, McGregor's a good grappler. He's not on Nurmagomedov's level, but he's going to be able to survive. If he survives the takedown in the first round, he comes out in the second. Believe it or not, I know Khabib has a great gas tank, but Khabib's going to be exerting himself this fight. He's got a lot of emotional energy coming in this fight. I'm with you. I mean, I don't see any way that Conor doesn't at least catch him. You go back and you watch Khabib's fights, even if you're one of the cynics that argued that he was just toying with Al Iaquinta, you don't toy with someone with a championship on the line. He showed a decent jab, but apart from that, his head movement is rudimentary and he moves in a linear, one-dimensional plane. McGregor's going to circle around him, avoid takedowns, and launch left hands. I wouldn't even be surprised if we saw the return of McGregor's kick game to the head, at least, I don't know, to the body. I don't think McGregor is going to worry too much about getting a head kick caught, and I think it's going to play into setting up his left hand a little bit more with Khabib coming just straight at him and trying to cut him off. I've really lost the ability to see Khabib winning by just smashing McGregor for 5 rounds or smashing him really early. The only way I can see this fight now is by McGregor TKOing Khabib at some point in the fight. I think Khabib holds some great wins, but like I said, I think Tony on any given night, Tony could beat Khabib. I think Poirier versus Khabib would be a close fight. I know Khabib's 26-0 and he holds a massive resume, but I think there's a little bit of smoke being blown up his ass. People want to say that since he's at AKA with Cormier and Rockhold and everybody in the massive record, it makes him just this unbeatable force. But I just don't see it here. And I think McGregor is definitely justifiable. I would toss some money in on him, and I see McGregor by TKO.
Yeah, and just pointing out a few more of Khabib's weaknesses. He fought Michael Johnson. He was, not, I wouldn't say rocked. I would say wobbled by a punch that Michael Johnson threw. Obviously, Michael Johnson is no joke, man. He one punch knockout Dustin Poirier not that long ago. So he's obviously very, very legit. But I mean, Michael Johnson's terrible on the ground. Edson Barbosa's terrible on the ground. Ali Quinta, has got decent wrestling, but he fared well on the ground. Against a guy with decent wrestling, Khabib was not able to implement that world-beating style he always has. Like you said, yeah, he was. He went into that Ali Quinta fight, and his coaches were yelling at him, saying, "Stop standing, take the fight down," and he was continuing to stand and kickbox with Ali Quinta. Man, when you're going into a fight against the most dangerous puncher in the UFC, and your last fight you were disobeying your coach's orders and doing standing when he told you to take the fight to the ground, man, that's a huge red flag. I don't rate Khabib's ego too high. I don't think that he was I think that he was trying to stand in that fight to prove that his stand up is good. And I think that he won those rounds against Ali Quinta. I think that Khabib's stand-up is even better than Conor's wrestling. But, man, I just don't see how a guy who relies on sloppy striking to close the distance in order to shoot for a takedown is going. He can't use that sloppy striking. If he spams 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, shoot. That's what he does. If he spams that 1-2, 1-2, he's going to be knocked out before he can shoot. That's just the way it's going to go. So, man, you can think about this fight all day. You get butterflies thinking about it. I think it starts off, and I think Conor will take the center of the octagon and stand out nice and long. I don't think he'll try to kick. I think that the kicks are too risky for getting taken down. I think that it will just be a straight boxing a game plan from Conor, and I think that Conor will win with that boxing game plan. So I can't fucking wait. 5 days away, just praying to the MMA gods that everything stays intact, praying that everything is okay, and everybody makes weight. Obviously Khabib has had problems with his weight before, never missed weight, but he has, actually, no, he did one time. Yeah, he got pulled off the card one time, UFC 209, when he missed weight. But, praying to God that does not happen. It's very, very unlikely that he would throw away the biggest fight of his career for a weight problem. So, I hope everybody enjoys the card. I obviously hope Conor wins. I hope, it lives up to the expectations of everybody. And any more closing thoughts on the card in the main event?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great card. Like I said, I really hope, like you said, I really hope there's no weight issues, nobody pulls out. And I mean, really, when it comes down to the end of it, I just think the different combinations we could have at the lightweight title picture right now. McGregor wins and Tony Ferguson wins, or Khabib and Tony, or just those different matchups are just such interesting matchups. And I mean, it just makes the card so. Just, the McGregor effect makes it fun to watch, but there's just so many different outcomes in those two last fights that make the lightweight division just such a great division.
Yeah, like we said, 4 lightweight champions at the top of this card, and it just doesn't get much better than that. The betting lines have been out for a long time on this one. I imagine we might see some more personalized lines. Apparently, back in the day, but for live lines on Conor McGregor fights, they would have more than 2 props. Either money lines or fight goes the distance. They would have odds makers ready to go with more dynamic lines for these live bets. So hopefully we see that. Maybe we'll see some like glove touch props and whatnot. I've actually already seen them on some other books, but not 5 dimes yet. So hopefully they transition over to 5 dimes. They have so and so by KO in 1 round, or McGregor wins in the first minute at plus 800. Man, that's action right there. I hope I see that line on 5 dimes. But like I said, Saturday night can't fucking come soon enough. It crept up very, very quickly. Luckily I was just starting school and doing all this crazy stuff, and my life's been moving fast, and this shit just popped up out of nowhere. And I can't fucking wait to see Conor back in the MMA octagon. There was a chance a couple months ago where we thought that he might not fight MMA again, and if he did, he would just come back for the easy fights against Nate Diaz or GSP or something like that. No, he came back against the hardest fucking fight in the division, the worst nightmare matchup possible. The fight that people thought that Conor would never accept a couple of months ago. Oh, he fought Floyd Mayweather. There's no way he's coming back from the greatest boxer in the world to fight one of the best wrestlers in the world. Wait a minute. That's exactly what he fucking did. And he's not scared. He knows his abilities more than anybody. He's confident in himself. He predicted the future so many times before, and I believe in him still. And obviously he had that quick stint in the boxing world where he looked human. He looked beatable. But man, this is MMA. This is a whole different game, and this is where Conor McGregor is one of the best pound for pound fighters in the world. So with that being said, that'll wrap up the analysis for the UFC 229 card. I believe that's going to be all for the podcast this week. We don't have much stories coming out for the rest of the week. Right now McGregor and Khabib are doing a lot of media. Man, a lot of media for the week of the fight. They're doing the MMA Hour right now. They're on Conan O'Brien on Wednesday. They're doing a press conference on Thursday. Open workouts on so and so. The media day on one day. Then they have the weigh-ins. It's going to be a busy fucking week, ladies and gentlemen. And just like I said, pray to the MMA gods that this card stays intact, that nothing bad happens, and no tragedies happen in the next 5 days. So you want to give your closing thoughts on everything real quick?
Yeah, man, looking forward to it. If you cover up the main event and the fight under it, obviously not the greatest card ever, but every time McGregor fights, it's a spectacle. That fight's actually going to be like the day before my birthday, so I thought it was super sick how that worked out, because I'm just going to go with like a bunch of my boys and everybody and go watch it then. So yeah, looking forward to it. I think both guys. I wouldn't be mad if either guy won. So I think Khabib would have an interesting title run, and obviously Conor's nothing but entertainment. So yeah, looking forward to it, man. Like you said, hoping no injuries happen, and just can't fucking wait.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining me on the program to predict it, to break it down, to analyze it. It's been a pleasure, like always, my man. And have a very happy birthday on October 5th. I hope your present is Conor bringing you the touch of death to Khabib's chin.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Hope so. Thanks for having me back on, man.
Yep, thank you for joining me again. And ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, aliens, Martians, any conscious being tuning into the podcast, thank you for tuning in to this special episode of the UFC 229 breakdown of Martian MMA. And I will see you guys next week. Conor bless. Peace.